Hello, welcome to Garden Chronicles. My name is James David. In this particular video, I'm actually talking a little bit more on the details factor of variegated plant, and especially these are actually trending plants and popular plant. And in most cases, these are actually sensitive and slow growing plants. And I would like to share on my experience and the thoughts and opinion based factors on this particular plant care, and more on the research factor, and a little bit more on the collection of what I experience and I would like to share here in this particular video. A basic introduction. These are actually comparison from my earlier video where I have edited and placed specific plants directed to discuss more on these specific types of variegated plants. You can actually view more on an extended version of this particular collection of all the plants in my earlier video on the topic of Care Park Plant Festival. Without further ado, let's begin on the first topic of this particular plant known as Monstera Constellation. You might find that there is a sort of acronym, which is a short form name, that is MTC, which is commonly known here for their easy reference. And do also take note that Monstera Constellation do not have a variegated name behind it. That means you won't see MTCV, because it is understood that Monstera Constellation is a variegated plant. Now, I just want to make first most important observation and information on this is that Monstera Constellation does not exist on a natural element plant. That means you will not find it growing in a wild or in a natural habitat in something of that kind of condition, because this particular plant is actually created in a lab, something like a tissue culture plant. And I will get more details to that, and that is the main topic here in this particular discussion. Point number one: tissue culture plants. If you ever noticed that from the beginning of this video, all of these MTC plants appears to be grown like a seedling, sort of like you will see their leaves almost appears to come from a crown, like a center, and not from a cutting, and all appearing to be growing as if like almost alike. The growth pattern, the number of leaves, and the size of the leaf is sort of like very much in stages kind of thing. And you notice that in most cases, in the earlier time, at least about 5 years ago or 10 years ago, when these are actually sold in premium prices, these plants were actually sold using cuttings. But apparently these particular ones appears to be more like everything is same, sort of like a bit overgrown size of a pothos plant. This is the telltale sign of tissue culture plants. A lot of people, especially common people, especially new beginners, will not be aware of this matter, because there is a slight difference when it comes to tissue culture plants versus the type that is already been acclimatized and has been grown over the years as a normal plant. So this is one of the factors why in most cases where new beginners would tend to purchase this plant in thinking that these particular ones are hardy plants and just give like a normal plant care, especially watering and lighting and feeding, and they find that this particular plant dies or start to perish as the weeks goes by. And I would like to talk more on this detail in this video. Point number two, plant care. I want to make an emphasis here is that if you are a first timer here in the context of growing Thai constellation, and you have not actually purchased and tried your hands on a common Monstera plant, especially Monstera Deliciosa, or another type that is actually easily available as known as Monstera Borsigiana, I would suggest try your hands on that first. Technically speaking, I must tell you that even the green version seems to be a little bit more sensitive types. I've actually killed many times with that, not few, many times, many times, until I figure out exactly what is the problem with this particular type of Monstera. Do not get me wrong, unlike photos, this particular one, or even Syngonium, Monstera types seems to be a little bit more sensitive and finicky. So I would like to say that the lot of factors are actually important to take note of, especially the growing condition. I have noticed the biggest problem with Monstera is the lighting, followed by humidity and the watering. Do remember that when it comes to photos, these plants are very hardy and able to handle abuse. Unlike Monstera, if there is a root problem, the whole thing do tend to perish. So these are the things that I want to make an emphasis, and there is a lot of factors to be taken care of. And one of the things that I've actually noticed is their inability to acclimatize, and so therefore they take a very long time to acclimatize, and therefore if there is a lack of humidity they do tend to burn, and if there's too much of water they also appears as if the leaves are turning yellow, and the root rot may not be visible if their whole plant is actually buried in the potting medium. So watering is also another factor which you really have to take care of, that it cannot be too wet and soggy, because even in the aroid midst, these plants do tend to rot and perish easily. So let's say that you are a seasoned gardener and you have actually owned a green monstera and you would like to try on Thai constellation. And these are the factors that I would want to make mention. Point 3, change the potting medium. This is very important to take out the whole root ball and check the condition of the roots, because you will never know whether they are actually rotting inside when you purchase the plant. In some cases, there are rotting taking place, or even pest infection, especially root mealybug. And there were cases where once I have actually been scammed, where the whole root ball have been chopped off and only the crown has been placed at the top of it. So these are the things that you can actually check and figure it out before the plants start to show signs of stress, and when it's too late to actually correct it, you have actually lost a lot of factors where the plant is actually dying. So these are the things that you can actually avoid by changing the soil medium. Now the factor here is that there is a contention where some people think that if I were to do so, I'm actually stressing the plant. Yes, in a context is true, but in a long run you will actually save a lot of problem and actually save a lot of money too, in a way that when you actually change the potting medium according to what is grown very well in your garden condition. Now this is very important because you're actually not sure how these growers and vendors are actually taking care of their plants. In most cases they may actually handling them in a greenhouse factor where humidity is at the optimum, and watering is very much more on the element of misting. Hence the plant is very optimal in their growth factors. But when it comes to a garden condition, that could be in many various degrees, where like me, I'm actually handling the garden as it is, as to be able to acclimatize and grow in my garden condition without any special features or equipment attached to it. And this is my style of growing, in a way that I don't want to make the plant fit into my garden, rather the plant able to handle the weather in a way that I don't have to worry about it. So if you are actually looking into that kind of conditions, then you have to look into the factor where these things that you have to take care of in a way that you want to keep these plants in long-term basis. Point 4 is that I would like to talk about different types of Monstera Deliciosa variegation, and all of this variegation are subject to reversion to back to their green version. Hence all of these are actually not stable, hence therefore their premium prices, and due to the factor that this can be very challenging if their condition is not right, and also it also has a lot to do with their growing condition, their lighting, even their feeding factor, that if any of this has been stressed, they will go back to a reversion of a total green common Monstera Deliciosa. So these are the things that a lot of things has not been properly talked about, because a lot of people who may have purchased these plants for commercial purpose or able to propagate them and resell them back, only to find two factors which is currently now has taken place, where the trend has slowly collapsed. In most cases, it has also been said that the plants has been cancelled, in a way to say that a lot of these have lost their popularity, and people do not want to spend a lot of money purchasing these plants only to find them turning back to reversion to green. And this is the thing about plant market, because a lot of these plants are actually very new, which is newly been introduced, so a lot of people do not know of their growing condition. These are the few names and the plants that I've able to capture them in video, but there are not subject just for these few limited ones. They are also known as Monstera mint, yellow star, aurea. In a way that there will be more that will be introduced time to time. Also the Japanese version. So a lot to do with what you can afford and what you fancy. Do take note that these may not be permanent plant over time, that if at all they were to grow too big, and if you do not trim down the green colored leaves, they may lose out the variegation altogether completely. So a lot of care and research is required, so that you may enjoy this particular plant in long-term basis. Point number 5 is this particular type of Monstera. Now it's no longer trending, but in initial stage, when Monstera Deliciosa was actually trending and was highly sought after, another new plant known as Monstera Borsigiana was actually introduced as a tissue culture plant and was actually flooding the market here. And the problem was that a lot of people were not aware of the origin or the characteristics of this particular Monstera. Hence, later on, maybe about a year or two, the particular characteristics, especially the fenestation and perforation that is appearing to show that it is not a large type. Hence, there was a lot of tug of war and contention taking place, because this particular plant appears to be actually growing very fast and vigorous, and do not have the grandstand or the showcase of the magnificent size of what the original Monstera Deliciosa was actually showing. So a long history, in a way, of tug of war of taken place within the past 2 years, where the contention and the problem occurred, where a lot of people who were actually zealous actually have purchased this the smaller version, the mini version, for a premium price of a Deliciosa, and they were not able to collect back or retain back their initial deposit for this particular plant, because nobody knew how the plant appeared to be in when it was first introduced in the market. Due to this fact, one of the things that have taken place is that sort of like jaded the trending, and a lot of people were suspicious and were in a way cautious to purchase one of these types, simply because they do not want to spend a lot of money on it, and on the element where it can be another type of scam that has been taking place, because a lot of people just lost trust with this particular type of Monstera. One thing for sure, when it comes to characteristics, these do have more on a white tone in comparison to the other ones, which is very much yellow, especially when it comes to the aurea version. Now, when it comes to Borsigiana, one of the things which is a main factor when it comes to albo is that their colorization is very much surface pigmentation. That means to say the whole thing may be like a splash of color, whereas when it comes to Thai constellation, it is very much more on a sprinkling or more of a splatter kind of colorization. So albo seems to be a little bit more stronger, and you can see that it has more on a white version. In a way, also it can fall into the category where it can also revert back to a normal green. So these are the things that you have to watch out for when it comes to lighting and growing condition. One of the strangest thing about Monstera is their propagation, especially when it comes to cutting. They seems to rot easily, and it takes months for them to actually establish its roots in water. And sometimes it does well in leca and even perlite. But however, there is a strong element of challenge when it comes to propagation. Do take note that like most climbing plants, these monsteras do very well on Totem Pole, especially when the leaves tend to mature better with patterns on their leaves. Coming to point 6 are the ones that is available here in the tropical region, especially this particular one known as Epipremnum pinnatum variegation. And this particular type that is known as Epipremnum is actually very much related to a photos plant, and to say that this is extremely hardy and able to handle the weather here, especially the rain and the sun and even the dry conditions. However, I also noticed that when it comes to the variegated type, especially the white one, it seems to turn a little bit, has its burns, and it does turn a little bit brown at the edges because of lack of humidity. But however, in that comparison to a Monstera, this particular one does fare well in this hot and humid weather. What I can say here is that this is actually far more a vigorous growing plant and is easy to care for and able to handle the weather in a lowland hot climate. I would recommend this for a new beginner, and to say on a factor of plant care, this able to acclimatize easily, able to grow well, and also does give a beautiful fenestation on their leaves. Here in the point 6, I would like to talk about this particular type of totem pole, which is actually used as a felt, which I find is very much experimental, and somehow I find it does hold enough moisture and does not rot the root ball. Plant care is very much similar like the Monstera plant. However, this particular one is much more hardier than Monstera and able to handle the elements here in this lowland climate. However, do take note that these are still a slow growing plant and may not do so well once they are cut, and to be propagated, do not take it lightly as they can easily rot if the right conditions are not met. So once if you are cutting these plants, do take it with high plant care because they can rot easily. Point number 7 is this particular monstera known as Monstera Adansonii. One of the things about this particular plant, I can actually say roughly on a factor that is actually a unicorn plant, in a way to say that I would categorize it as a plant that does not actually exist, because I find that even the green version seems to be very difficult to cultivate, and they can be finicky, in a way to say that they can certainly rot without any reason. Don't get me wrong, some people have managed to cultivate it without any much problems. However, just like any monstera plants, these are actually slow growing plants, also with the added problems where they do not do well when it comes to shock. Now, I'm just talking about the green version. So when it comes to the variegated part, especially this kind of types, you just have to figure out that it is times 2 the factor. And if you can notice here, the ones that is actually cultivation and the one that is actually sold here is a singular node plant, and that can be very tricky, and in a way I can say can raise your eyebrow, because if you talk about a singular leaf and in case that particular one dies, there goes your plant, and you may not able to promise anything when it comes to its variegation, especially with the types that when it comes to a singular leaf plant, when you can't even see anything that's actually growing out of it. So, and I can see from here that the whole pot is been buried, these are the problems when it comes to checking, because you never know that whether the root ball have taken place in a way it's stable root ball, or if it are just a quick cut and propagation kind of stuff. And if you make a small mistake, especially when it comes to humidity or overwatering, the whole thing can rot easily. So in this point 7, I would always recommend to use a transparent pot for you to be able to check the root growth, so that you will know that when a rot takes place, you can immediately change and take action especially in this kind of situation. Point 8 is about a similar types of monstera. In a way, you can see the patterns on the leaf and the variegated factors, and these are still in a high element of their premium prices, and these are fall into the rare plant category and still trending. And I would like to share a little bit more on these particular types here in this collection. So it's very much more on an easy factor, and I would like to talk about this particular one known as Florida Beauty. Another thing here is that way back then there was another one that is known as Florida Ghost, which is more on a white version. Hence, that particular one seems to be very finicky. It did come for a short while and then it just fizzled out, because due to the factor where, like, when it comes to the variegation, is so unstable that when you cut that particular plant, the bottom part of the variegation just disappears and it reverts to green. Hence, a lot of people has tried their hands on it and gave up on it, and that particular plant is sort of like cancelled. And I think this particular one has been replaced to Florida green. However, because due to the nature where when a plant has showed is kind of his finicky characteristic, a lot of people are a little bit cautious and in a way refrain from purchasing these types of plants. However, I just want to make note of it here, so you can actually see that these are still type of plants that is been in sale, and followed by different types, in a way to say that the other types of philodendrons here, this Philodendron domesticum, which in a way appears to be more of a longer lance shaped kind of philodendron with variegation. My point number 9 is to bring to attention this particular type of philodendron is one of the most expensive one that is currently sold here in this particular market. And I want to make mention to you here is that always check the market before purchasing. And in a way, I can also say that when it comes to trending plants, their plant prices are never stable. Hence, it will just be at that moment of time. And the thing here is that when it comes to plant price crashes, it will just descend horribly. Do check out in my other videos where I talk about plant trends, and I will actually give a very detailed information and thoughts and opinion based on that, and you can actually check it out in my earlier video on that topic. Now, when it comes to this particular plant, this Philodendron Vitale, I've noticed that this particular type of variegation is extremely beautiful, and I believe it is very much to do with the price, simply because this particular one is very stable. Now, I must mention to you that one of the things that I'm not too happy about is when I look at this particular plant is that the whole root ball has been buried inside the potting media. So this is one of the things that the vendors do so here. Perhaps this particular one is not for beginners, and I would rather say so in a sense that you want to pay a very huge premium price for this particular plant. I would rather suggest to try out with the green version first and try your hands on that to see whether the plant able to handle your lifestyle and your plant care. In that way, you can say that once the plant is stable, say about 3 to 6 months time, then do go for these particular types of variegated types of plants. It has been said that it is notoriously known that when it comes to this particular philodendron, they do revert back to green. So hence that's one of the reasons why these plant prices are still expensive, because of their stability in their variegation colors. It is good to note that when you notice that plant prices are still expensive, it is just a matter of due of time where these will be eventually tissue cultured to easily thousands, and therefore it will just flood the market, just like any of the earlier videos that I showed about monsteras and other types of philodendron. So my final point 10, is one of the most important factors when it comes to plants and gardening is the elements of patience, because I find that no matter what you do, if you lack patience, there's a lot of wastage, a lot of spending, a lot of things that will be just taken place. So it's a lot of things that I noticed and learned, that when it comes to patience, it's a matter of waiting and just observing. You'll just find that everything just fall into place. I've now come to the end of my video, and this is the part that I would really like to ask you for your favor. And if you really can, I would really appreciate very much that if you can actually subscribe to my channel. And this actually helps the YouTube algorithm to sort of like select and show the element of traffic that takes place in my channel, and this would actually create more awareness for all the other gardeners here who may want to see more of the detailed information on my garden space. And hence, when there's a lot of traffic, this will actually help to garner more interest in my channel. One of the factors that I've actually noticed is through the analyst is that I only find that only 2% of the people here who actually does click like and subscribe to my channel. Hence, I would really like to make emphasis here for a request. And if you really like my video, and if you find that my videos and my channel is beneficial and helpful for your gardening experience, and you look forward for looking into my garden space, I would really appreciate seriously if you can click like and subscribe to my channel, and do place in your comments, and I will more than happy to entertain and indulge myself in putting in all the queries in according to your questions based on my experience and my knowledge. Also, I would really like to request that you do check out in all the other videos here, which is under popular and most viewed, and see if at all any plants that actually garner your gardening experience. Thank you so much for your support, and see you again in my next video. Take care and have a nice day. Bye.